I love the fact that Monty McNair has built a roster that makes sense. No more do we have to dig for answers and try and really rack our brains to find out how players are going to fit together. You needed shooting, you got shooting. You needed defense, you brought in a defensive minded coach. Is this the most well constructed Sacramento Kings roster in the last 16 years? I'm going to ask that question and talk about a lot more Kings topics with Deuce Mason from the Deuce and Mo podcast right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports producer and reporter at ABC 10 News here in the California capital. And I'm very excited to have Deuce Mason back here on Locked On Kings. It's been way too long since I've had him on. Of course, Deuce is extremely busy doing all the great work that he does on the Deuce and Mo podcast with Morgan Reagan. I used to work with Deuce and Mo at Sports 1140 KHDK, and they really paved the way in so many ways for Sacramento sports and Sacramento Kings podcasts. What the Deuce and Mo podcast has done over the years has been phenomenal. It's been an inspiration to me. I know an inspiration to many others. Their success story is one, incredibly fun to follow and hear and learn about and understand. And number two is extremely well deserved with how good of people they are and how hard working they are. I've always looked up to Deuce, always looked up to Mo. Had Mo on the podcast a few months ago. To have Deuce back on here today, really looking forward to. And I know many of you are such huge fans of them, and rightfully so. And if you haven't checked out the Deuce and Mo podcast, you absolutely need to do so. But to have Deuce here on Locked On Kings, I knew I didn't want to focus just on one topic. Wanted to talk about a bunch of stuff. We spend a lot of time talking about De'Aaron Fox and his next season. We talk about De'Aaron defensively, what he needs to bring to the table. We talk about this roster. If it's, like I mentioned in the intro, the most well-constructed Sacramento Kings roster since they last made the playoffs in 2006. We talk about Domantas Sabonis and the offseason workouts that he's been putting in or that we've seen, and him adding a three-point shot. We talk about Keegan Murray and his time at Summer League. Deuce has great things to say about those who are kind of taking away from what Keegan Murray has done or what he did in Las Vegas and in the California Classic. And we even discussed a little bit about Richaun Holmes, his role coming off the bench, how we both believe Richaun can be an excellent contributor for Sacramento. We even talk about Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter. My point is, we talk about a bunch of stuff. And actually, this interview went a little bit longer, and I trimmed off the beginning of this interview because somehow we started the interview talking about WWE wrestling. And I know some of you are wrestling fans, but it didn't really make sense for a Kings podcast, so I decided to cut it out. Maybe that's wrong of me. If you want, I guess, a full released version, yell at me, let me know, and I'll include that first bit. We just spent a couple minutes talking a little bit about WWE wrestling. I think I asked him which Sacramento Kings player would make the best WWE wrestler. Yeah, that's how weird and off-season content it got there at the beginning. So I trimmed that out. We're diving right into the conversation. I start by asking Deuce about the construction of this roster. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want to respond to anything, please do so. You can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. But for now, here is from the Deuce and Mo podcast, Dave Deuce Mason. I'm looking at this roster, and last offseason, I significantly overreacted to what the Sacramento Kings were to the point where
Matt overreacted.
Hey, come on. It's a brand. But we were very let down, let's say, by how last year's roster went. They should have been significantly better than what they were, even if they weren't nearly as good as what I thought that they would be. So I'm looking at this offseason. I'm looking at this roster with cautious optimism. And my first question is what I've been asking myself. Is it fair to say on paper, this is the most well-constructed, I'm not going to say best, but most well-constructed roster the Kings have had since they were last in the playoffs in 2006? Or do we actually need to see game evidence to make such a claim?
Yeah, I mean, if you look on paper, it looks, I like it a lot. And I think some would push back and say, hey, about the team that had Rondo and Rudy Gay and that group with Marco Bellinelli and Kufis, that offseason where people got pretty excited, at least initially. Yeah, I would probably say so on paper. Of course, you got to see what it looks like. But I don't know how you look at this roster and don't think it's just a better team.
Hmm.
You've got more depth. When you've got Fox and Sabonis, you need some shooting. They got shooting. They added Monk. They add Herter. Then you add in the fact that Keegan Murray looks like he could be a rookie that can play right away. I'm not going to go crazy and expect what he did in summer league to immediately translate into the NBA, but I think he's going to be productive. I think the guy can shoot the ball. He's got good size. He's a smart player, high IQ. He'll fit just great. So, like, if you compare last year's roster opening night to this roster that we're seeing right now, late July, there's zero doubt it's a better team.
One of the things I appreciate about what Monty has done this offseason, and it's really simple and kind of dumb, but honestly, compared to a lot of the moves that Vlade Divac's made this offseason, I understand. It makes sense what Monty is doing. You have your two best players not known for shooting. You surrounded them with shooters. You went out and got a defensive minded coach. Like, it just makes sense. It's, you don't have to really dig too deep and try and pick apart, okay, why is he doing this? Maybe it's because of the, no, it's clear. Kings needed shooting, they got shooting. Kings needed defense, they brought in a defensive-minded coach. The simplicity of it, I almost think, works in the favor of Monty McNair. And I point to a team like the Milwaukee Bucks a couple seasons ago, of course, NBA champions, but a team that they have this phenomenal basket, or a guy who can attack the basket, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, impossible when he gets down in the lane, and they just surrounded him with a bunch of shooting. It was simple, it was basic, and it won them a championship, and it was understandable. I appreciate the fact that McNair is doing something that at least makes sense on paper. Hopefully it actually translates on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team's still going to have its issues defensively. It really, to me, hinges on a couple of things for the defensive improvement. Fox just has to be more consistent on that end. I think he's got the tools to do it. He's got to be more consistent on that end. And can Brown put together a good team defensive concept that at least allows the Kings to be respectable? You know, I'm not asking for much. You just can't be 30th, like 28 to 30 every year for the last 16 years. That's just not going to be conducive to a winning brand of basketball. But could this Kings team make a jump to 20th? Is that possible? I don't know. But if it is, I think the offense is going to be good enough that they could be a really competitive team in the Western Conference, but they just can't be a train wreck defensively. And this whole season, we can spend all day talking about like the additions they made, and I like all of them. But to me, it all hinges on not only Fox's defense, but just De'Aaron Fox coming out of the gates strong, ready to go. I loved what I saw from him post trade deadline. Really, like almost January on, it looked like, okay, this is the De'Aaron Fox that a lot of people were high on, felt like he had all-star potential. I want to see that type of Fox, and I think you might. You know, I think I'm very bullish on De'Aaron Fox. I think, you know, I heard one person tell me that, like, oh, his mindset is different this year. Now, you got to see it once the season starts, but I think at the end of the season, you heard him talking about the need for structure in a head coach. Well, they got one in Mike Brown. It seems like he understands the importance of this year for him and the team. And if this team is going to have success, if this team is able to even make the playoffs this year, it's going to be because De'Aaron Fox plays at a very high level.
You said more consistent defensively. What does that mean? Is it a more solid, as long as he's in the game, he plays the same defense basically every possession? Is that fair to ask of someone who you're expecting to be your primary scorer and facilitator on offense? Or does that mean when the game is on the line, you get maximum effort, De'Aaron? What does consistent defense from De'Aaron mean to you?
You just can't have situations where you have games that you're getting destroyed on that end. And I think there are some examples that we all saw last year where the defensive engagement just wasn't there, not only just from him, just from the team, right? And that could be part of it. It could be concept, it could be whatever, and maybe Brown is just able to get that out of him. I'm not trying to act like he needs to be an all defensive guy either. But I think if you want to be great in this league, and it's hard to do, right? Like the difference between good and great in this league, it's a significant gap. It's being able to every single night, all 82, no matter who the opponent is, bring it on both ends. Let's go. What do you want to be? Do you want to be good or do you want to be great? And so it's being able to do it consistently. I mean, I just want to see him be engaged. And, it's understanding the importance of what him bringing defensively can mean for the rest of the team too, the point of attack. And I mean, I saw last year, there were many times where he's maybe defending a bigger guy, and he actually did quite well. I mean, against Paul George last year, I remember a game against the Clippers. I was like, okay, like Fox is really into this matchup. He's ready to go. I, I think some of it falls on him, but some of it just falls on roster construction and coaching concepts too. So I think being all aligned there should lead to better results for Sacramento.
I know KC and D'Lo have pointed this out, but they've talked a lot about when Fox plays angry or when Fox plays with a chip on his shoulder, or there's almost, you can tell when Fox is taking something not necessarily more seriously, but he's just definitely more engaged, whether he's been slighted, whether something happened in the game that pissed him off, or if he takes on the challenge of like a Paul George, he just seems more engaged on that end. Do you think Fox has never been that super vocal leader in terms of like the Draymond Green yelling type thing? And he's been asked about that, and he said that's kind of just not the way he handles things. Although we've seen him talk. One of the things I loved at the end of last season was when he was not playing, the camera caught him, I think, multiple times a game in the ear of Davion Mitchell on the sidelines. So he clearly is a communicator and a leader in that sense. But a more emotional De'Aaron Fox on the floor, do you think he needs that and the Kings need that? Or is the way De'Aaron is as a person okay to be the star that the Kings need him to be?
He just needs to be De'Aaron Fox. And if that at times means he's more vocal, cool. No one talks about Steph Curry being vocal. They talk about Steph Curry because he's a great player and he performs at a high level and he wins games. So if Fox is out there and the Kings are winning games and being competitive, no one's gonna be talking about, hey, you should talk more. He should be more of a leader. Just be yourself. Like, are there instances where you could maybe take it upon yourself to rally the troops? Sure. But like, it doesn't need to be a thing that he does all the time. Like, you need to get that out of him. No, be yourself. And I love players who play with a bit of an edge. So I would love if he just came in and was like super vocal, but like if that's not who he is, it's not who he is. I think we tend to look too much into those things, to be honest. I mean, I think the biggest thing that maybe Fox struggled with last year was dealing with the frustration. I mean, and it's hard because I'm not trying to excuse Fox either. I mean, look, the team doesn't do well. You're the best player. You're making a lot of money. You have to perform at a high level. But it's also not easy to be a part of a losing team and see the chaos. And I mean, maybe there's a couple of guys in the locker room unhappy, or hey, we just gave up 130 for the 5th consecutive game. I need some help around me. I need some shooting. Just things not going your way. Sometimes it's tough for players to deal with that. It's tough for humans. I mean, I've been in work situations where I'm like, I can't. This sucks. I don't want to be here. And it's hard. You have to mentally overcome that. I think the biggest thing is Mike Brown is seemingly setting a kind of a standard, but also like really good communication with guys, it seems like. And the other thing that Mike said during his presser that jumped out to me was he talked about what he needs from De'Aaron Fox defensively. He said that publicly. Like, he put it out there, which I really liked it. It wasn't necessarily like a direct challenge. Like, so he wasn't like Brown was angry about it, but it was definitely like, hey, we need you to be better defensively.
And that's actually a consistent theme that we saw, or at least heard. I think Malik Monk brought it up in his introductory press conference. He said openly, like, he knows that's an area that he needs to get better defensively, and that he was challenged to do that when he was initially signed. He said he had a phone call with either Monty or Mike Brown, and they said, we need you to be more engaged defensively since we're bringing you on here. And I'm going to ask you about Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter in a little bit, but how much stock do you put into off-season workout videos? Because we've seen these videos of Domantas Sabonis working with Lethal Shooter. They all look good. I haven't really seen an off-season video that doesn't look good the majority of the time. But how much stock do you put into the work that Sabonis is putting in and showing off? Or maybe it's more Lethal Shooter showing it off. But what have you seen from him?
I don't put any stock into it because, like, whether cameras are on or not, like, these guys should be in the gym working. I mean, I'm encouraged, like, oh, cool, he's working on some things. But, like, I expect that, right? Like, that's just the basic thing of being an NBA player in the offseason. You should be putting in the work to evolve your game. You should always be pushing yourself to be better, because if you're not the best, you got work to do to try to get there. So, I mean, it's cool. I mean, I think for fans, it's awesome to see just some footage of guys working out and go, oh, man, Sabonis is hitting some threes. What happens if he does that during the NBA season? What's that mean for the Kings offense? I guess I just don't get excited about it. I mean, how many times over the years, Willie Cauley-Stein used to put out these epic workout videos. I mean, you watch those, you're like, God, this guy might be a max guy. Or Ben Simmons, Ben Simmons. Oh my God, hey, Ben Simmons is taking jumpers during workouts. Well, that's fine. I don't know what it really means. Also, most NBA guys who do put that stuff out, they're not showing all the misses. It's not like the guy who's editing it. It's like, hey, I'm gonna put in the whole raw workout. You're seeing the best stuff, and that's fine. And the same thing with Tyreek Evans. Like Tyreek Evans has been, trying to get back in the league, and he's showing what he can do. He looks really impressive. Looks like he's in great shape. Some of the highlights look amazing. You're not seeing the full picture, so I don't know. It's fun, I guess, for content. You get to see it, but ultimately, I don't like go crazy about it either.
Today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar's Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor, delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right, Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, this is the best part. It's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to built.com, snag a box for you and your family. It'll be the perfect treat. Or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself, which is what I have to do, honestly, with my wife. If she finds them, they're gone in a second. Like all Built bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. It's absolutely delicious. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You can get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Is Sabonis adding a consistent three-point shot? I don't necessarily want to ask if that's more important than De'Aaron adding a three-point shot, because both of them are extremely important. But I guess how much does that open up Sacramento's offense? Because they're going to run the offense. At least we believe the offense is going to be running through Domantas Sabonis a lot of the time in the high or low post. But if Sabonis can add a consistent three-point jumper to his game, how much better does that immediately make Sacramento's offense in your mind?
I mean, I think it helps a lot just from spacing. The more shooting, the better. You know, I've said this about Fox in the past, and I say the same thing about Sabonis. You don't need the guy to be a 40% three-point shooter. That'd be amazing. But could Fox get to 35%? He can do a lot of other things well. Get to the basket, right? We know he's able to get to the basket, score there. The mid-range stuff has looked really strong for De'Aaron. And for Sabonis, yeah, have an ability to come out and stretch the floor. It's modern day bigs. Like if you're a modern day big, having the ability to just step out and knock down a three does a ton for the offense. I don't need Sabonis like living out there. I don't think he's going to turn into Dirk or anything, but can he be a guy that knocks down a three? Sure. It seems like he's putting in the work, and even whether it's with lethal shooter, I know Doug Christie has been with him really most of the offseason, like in different spots around California where they are constantly working out every single morning. So like that's the one thing with Sabonis, he's going to put in the work. Like he's going to make sure in the offseason he's doing everything he can to improve his game. So it would be amazing if all of a sudden he knocked down threes. And I still, whether he does or not, like I think the Kings offense is going to function at a pretty high level this season.
And even going back to De'Aaron Fox's shooting, De'Aaron shot 37% from three-point range his second season in the league, and I think we sometimes forget that. And even though I think he shot below 30% from three-point range last season, although that percentage went way up the second half of the year. I appreciated the fact that the volume was higher too, right?
Yeah.
So he's shooting with confidence, at least, even if the shot's not falling.
For sure. I mean, I would say though, like that 1 year now looks like
An anomaly.
Yeah, it was one season. The rest have been right around 30%. So, yeah, I just some improvement there would be huge. He did improve his free throw percentage last year. That looked better. I'm eager to see what it looks like. I really am. I mean, we are 63 days away from the start of training camp in Sacramento. So, man, it's just crazy. Like, and then we'll have preseason games like a week after that, I assume. I'm just ready to see it.
And one of the biggest storylines I'm looking forward to following in training camp is the starting shooting guard battle. You bring in Kevin Huerter, you bring in Malik Monk. You can easily make an argument for both of them. I think Davion Mitchell should enter camp with the mindset that he has a shot to earn that position, or at least I would expect that from him. But out of the three of them, mainly Huerter and Monk, are you leaning in any one direction? If it were you calling that shot at this point, who you feel more comfortable starting?
Well, that's the one area that's interesting is both those guys have come off the bench. Monk more so throughout his career than Herter. Herter has gone back and forth, been starting, come off the bench. He's done a variety of things. I think you probably go with Kevin Herter. He's got good size. I love his ability to shoot the ball. He's a good playmaker, and his defense is better than I think people realize. It's good to have another guy out there that's like 6'7" as well. And for Monk, I think he could just be a microwave off the bench. I mean, instant energy. That's what I think about with Malik Monk. I think that guy's going to come off your bench and he's going to attack. He's going to knock down threes. He's going to jam on your head and talk some smack. Like, to me, he's the perfect guy to come off the bench. With that said, yeah, I want my guys competing. If I'm Mike Brown, I'm going, yeah, like we know Fox is the starting point guard. If Harrison Barnes is here, he's starting. Sabonis is starting. Those are three spots that you just know. I personally think Keegan Murray is going to be a starter too. He'll start at the 4. The shooting guard spot, if you're not for sure, yeah, create a competition. Go tell Davion Mitchell, go get that job. Malik Monk, go get it. You want to be a star in this league? Go prove it. Competition's a great thing. And I think so many people look at the battle and they think, oh, that means there could be infighting. No, like this is sports. It's competition. You try to go out there at practice, go at it, prove why you should belong in the rotation or in the starting lineup, whatever. So I think it's a great thing for Mike Brown to figure out.
Speaking of Mike Brown figuring lineups out, you mentioned Keegan Murray. I agree with you. I think Keegan Murray should be a day one starter. I think it just makes sense for him to be a day one starter. However, some coaches have the mindset that, hey, you're a rookie. Welcome to the NBA. Like, let's ease you into it a little bit more. We don't necessarily have to throw you out there, especially for a team with the expectations that the Kings have to perform right away. If we find out opening night, Keegan Murray is coming off the bench, maybe he goes with a Trey Lyles or someone else, just more of a veteran presence in that position. Are you okay with that decision from Mike Brown, or do you really think, no, Keegan Murray it's his spot. He's the most optimized for that lineup. He should be in there.
I think for me, if it was someone like Trey Lyles, I'd be very curious as to what Trey Lyles did in training camp to win the job. Like if you're starting over Keegan Murray, then you need to definitely outplay him completely. Like, and I just don't see that. Based on what I saw in Summer League, Keegan looks like he's going to be able to step in right away and contribute. And I think his life only gets easier when you're playing with just better talent around you. Also, the fact that it's not as if all these guys on Summer League rosters know each other. Like they get a few days of like a mini camp. They barely putting the offense in there. I mean, you're just trying to play. You're just trying to get out there and get reps. Well, this would be more structured. You've got a training camp. You're getting to know guys. Hopefully they get together as a team before it, like voluntarily, and come together and work out and build that chemistry. I just think Keegan does so many things that you need, especially when we talk about the need for shooting around Fox and Sabonis. I have zero doubt that Keegan is going to be able to shoot the ball right away at the NBA level. Also, his ability off the ball that I thought he showed a lot of during the Summer League, I'm just picturing that with Sabonis. I'm picturing that off-ball movement, not only to cut to the basket, maybe backdoor, but just free himself up for three. I mean, I just think it's almost a no-brainer. I'd be surprised. I know Sean Cunningham has mentioned, well, maybe you start Holmes and Sabonis. I just don't see it. I mean, I could see that lineup maybe playing together if they want to test things out to see what it looks like at times. But from a spacing perspective, probably not ideal.
I'm glad you brought up Richaun because I have a question about him, but I don't want to leave the train of Keegan Murray really quick because you and I were both in Las Vegas. We both got to see Keegan Murray live. I don't know if you were able to make it to the California Classic or not. I went to one of those games and saw him down there as well. A lot of those intangibles, the confidence, the composure that he has, that's mainly what jumped off the table to me, seeing him play in person, how just relaxed and calm he was even in the biggest of moments. But I know you've seen it because I've seen it. People wanting to take away from some of the things that Keegan Murray was doing, saying, hey, it's just summer league. He's obviously one of the best players out there, blah, 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 blah. And they have a point, right? You're not expecting Keegan Murray to come in and average 20 plus points per game in the NBA immediately like he was able to do in the summer league. But how do you respond to those critics or those who point out, hey, it's just summer league? What does Keegan need to do in your mind to kind of silence that a little bit?
The it's just summer league person is ridiculous. If Keegan Murray went to Vegas, shot 20%, scored 6 points a game, got no rebounds, was getting torched by Banchero, getting torched in every matchup, Chet was abusing him, those people would not say, it's just summer league. They would be like, this is a major concern. This guy's a bust. So you can't have it both ways. Like, yes, it is just summer league. I think most rational people look at it and go, Keegan Murray played well in summer league. That does not equate to Keegan Murray is going to be averaging 20 a game, being super efficient, hitting clutch baskets all the time at the NBA level. Yes, he's going up against better competition in the NBA, but also like summer league competition isn't necessarily a joke either. Like you have guys who are fighting for their NBA lives, whether it's to prove that they belong in the NBA, it's rookies who are very talented. Like he took on some really good rookies in the summer league, like from Chet to Paulo. We saw that was a classic matchup against Banchero. That was fun. Both those guys went at each other a few times. Banchero got him a couple of times. He got Banchero a few times. So, like, I understand the whole notion, like, hey, don't overreact. I'm not overreacting. I just see a guy who seems like a very smart player, high IQ, and I watched his college stuff. He looks like he's gotten better since college. That's encouraging to me for a young player who maybe, came on late, right? It's not like this guy was a highly recruited guy that every college in the country was trying to get him. It's taken him some time a bit. He has shown growth from March to now. That's super encouraging. And he played at a high level. I don't know how you can knock anyone who plays at a high level that consistently throughout a summer league. So just be realistic about it. I don't think you need to come in and be like, this guy is clearly the best rookie. There's no doubt about it. No, I think he is going to fit perfectly with what they have around him. And it'll be nice to see what he does his rookie year. I mean, Matt, if we're in a world where he's efficient, averages like, I don't know, 13, 14 points a game, gets you 7 rebounds, gets the free throw line, plays some smart defense, that's a win.
Yeah. And I think he also showed things that skill sets that he has that we believe that he had in the draft process that can translate right away. Like I can see Keegan Murray being a starter on opening night and not having to play or take his game to a higher level. I think he can be himself and will immediately make an impact because of the guys that he's playing with and how they work off of one another, the outside shot. And I appreciate too, Deuce, you pointed out the battles that he had against some of the other top rookies. I think what stood out the most to me, everybody will talk about the big shot that he hit to send the game to overtime against Paolo and Orlando, and rightfully so. But to me, what stood out the most about his individual matchups was the fact that the game that Keegan was most aggressive attacking the basket was against the best shot blocker in summer league. Like he went right at Chet and did not have concern, did not have fear. Did he finish every time around the rim? No, I think he got way better of Chet than a lot of other rookies did and completely outplayed him, in my opinion. The numbers support that. Chet is also going to be a fantastic rookie in my mind. So again, you don't want to put too much stock in that, but what I saw is someone who showed intangibles that the competition that he was facing doesn't matter. It shows a composure that he has on a floor that will translate to the NBA right away.
Yeah, and he wasn't scared to get physical either. I think he's strong. I mean, the Banchero stuff is crazy because I think Keegan's got some great size, and then you see Banchero up closer. Are you kidding me? 6'10", 250, moves well. But, I thought he had some nice defensive sequences against Banchero too, forcing him to give up the ball on drives. And, maybe that's a situation where, a year from now, Banchero is more confident with that and not giving up the ball in those situations. But yeah, I don't see how anyone could watch Keegan in Summer League if you actually watched it and not walk away thinking, this guy's going to help you. It doesn't mean you think he's going to be a star. It doesn't mean you think he's going to be an all-star. But I think there's like bare minimum, like Keegan Murray is going to be a good player in the NBA. And you hope he could be great, obviously.
Right. You're also the voice of Stockton Kings basketball. You and Mo broadcast every single game. You've gotten to, well, every home game. You've gotten to see a lot of Neemias Queta over the last year and some change. I'm a big fan of his. I'm really impressed by him. I think he brings natural skill sets. His size, his ability to block shots, hopefully his ability to rebound is something that the Kings main roster can use. But again, got to be realistic with someone on a two-way contract. I also really liked what I saw in spurts out of Keon Ellis. It seemed like, and I joked about this, every time Keon Ellis shot in front of the opposing bench, it went in, and he always had something to say and turn around. I like that out of Keon. I'm glad he took advantage of those moments. Those are two guys that you're going to see a lot in Stockton this year, but you got to see Neemias a lot last year. What do you think about his ability to actually make an impact on the main roster this year? Because I could see stretches where I could see him legitimately working his way to a main contract like Damian Jones and Chimezie Metu were able to a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think it's possible for sure. I think he showed some great flashes in the summer league. He showed some flashes last year in Stockton too. I think the most challenging thing for him last year was how often he got called up and didn't play in Sacramento. And I know the Kings were in a tough spot because they were so active in trade talks. They didn't know what was going to happen. They call him up just in case to have bodies if they're shorthanded. I get that. He just needs to play. And when he went back to Stockton, I believe after the trade deadline, he hadn't been there. He hadn't played in a while. It took him a while to kind of just get back in game shape because you're not playing games. And it's not, during an NBA season, these teams don't have a ton of practice time. They're not, and if they do, they're not going that hard at practice, right? They're trying to maintain. They're trying to make, just get body work done. Okay, I got to rehab this or I got to work on this. So it put him in a tough spot. I think he's just got to play a lot. But I could definitely see a world where he gets called up to the main roster and he's able to be a backup big. I mean, I think what he does well, good shot blocker. I think he moves well for a big his size. I think he has shown that he can come out and hit a three. He hit that big three in the Orlando game, but he's confident with it. He improved his free throw shooting dramatically last year toward the end of the year in Stockton, which I thought was a good sign. I think he's a good passer. Maybe takes some risks passing sometimes, but you saw, what the Kings were going for in Summer League where they're giving him the ball at the elbow and trying to orchestrate things because that could be a look that Sabonis, is doing in Sacramento with the big club. So I like his upside. I hope that they play him a lot in Stockton early, get him those reps. And then if he's ready to go, yeah, bring him on up.
Well, you will be able to see firsthand and keep us posted on what he and Keon Ellis are doing there. Final question I have for you, Deuce. Two very different off seasons for Richaun Holmes. Last season, he gets signed, comes in, still expecting to be the starting center for the Kings. Now, his replacement is here in two-time All-Star Domantas Sabonis, and he knows it. So even if Sean Cunningham might believe and others might believe, hey, maybe there's a chance that Richaun could still be a starter, I look at Richaun as a extremely valuable weapon coming off the bench. If he can buy into that role, and Richaun has shown his entire career that he'll give the same effort regardless of the role that he's in, and I don't blame him for being frustrated or disappointed that his starting spot has been taken from him, but I think Richaun could be extremely valuable for the Kings coming off the bench, especially if he improves a little bit as a rim protector. What do you think about his not being a six man off the bench, but being that backup big and maybe Energizer Bunny in a lot of ways with that second unit?
I think what he went through last year was a lot. I mean, one, think about the ultimate high of securing a contract like he did from Sacramento, making like $10 million a year when you're a guy who has bounced around the league, kind of on the fringes. You're pretty much fighting for your NBA life each and every year. Hell, when he came to Sacramento, let's not lose sight that Dwayne Dedmon was a starter. Let's not lose sight that at the start of camp, you're like, yeah, I mean, Rashawn's probably behind Harry Giles, right? That's crazy. And then 5 games in, Richaun Holmes is starting, and it kind of took off in Sacramento for him. I think Richaun had a tough year from the eye laceration. I think he had COVID, the personal stuff off the court, the Sabonis trade. Dude, that was a lot to overcome, I think, for anybody in the league. Now you fast forward, you were at Mike Brown's press conference. Richaun Holmes was there. Mm-hmm. Did Richaun Holmes have to be there? If Richaun Holmes is irritated with what's happening or his role or whatever, is he at Mike Brown's presser? I don't think so. And, Brown made a point to bring up that he had talked to him and his agent. I think Richaun Holmes is, from a competitive standpoint, I'm sure he's like, I want to be the starter in Sacramento. I'm going to prove it. I want that out of him. Let him use that as fuel. He could totally help he could totally help coming off the bench. A guy, one, the push shot, we know how great that was. Him in the pick and roll was really nice. And then defensively, he can help this team. Are there matchups that aren't great for him against some of these huge guys in the NBA? Absolutely. But he's really good. He's good at coming out, defending the pick and roll. He can switch out on the guys. To have an asset like that coming off your bench, I think is definitely big for Sacramento. And I know there's so much talk. Oh, they got to trade Richaun. I just don't think his value is going to be, they're not going to get what they want back for him if they moved him today. So let him repair his value here, and maybe he can end up being a key contributor coming off your bench. That's the other thing, too, that should be noted. Like, Domantas Sabonis gets in foul trouble a lot. How many times did we see in his 15 games where he picked up like 3 quick fouls and the Kings are got to go to the bench? Rashawn's going to get an opportunity to play. And I think he could really help this team. And I think he will buy in because he is a grinder. And that's what he's done his whole entire basketball career. He's grinded to get to this level. And I think he can help the team a lot next year.
It was a real treat having Deuce here on Locked On Kings. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And again, if you're not familiar with Deuce and Mo, make sure you follow that podcast. I don't know how you're not familiar with them. They're just so major here in the Sacramento area, and rightfully so. Deuce also, by the way, serves as the executive radio producer of the Sacramento Kings. So he's at every single Kings game on the radio broadcast. Like I mentioned during the interview, he and Mo are the voices of Stockton Kings basketball, and Morgan Reagan, of course, you can see on TV's pre and post-game Sacramento Kings pre and post-game shows. So they're all over the place. They're phenomenally plugged in, not just to the Sacramento sports scene, but the sports scene in California in general. They cover more than just Kings basketball on the Deuce and Mo podcast. Also have a ton of phenomenal guests. Check out the work that they do, and I really hope to have them back on here on Locked On Kings in the near future. Next episode of Locked On Kings, I'm talking more about De'Aaron Fox. What does Fox have to do to be an all-star next season? I touch on that and more on the next episode, so please join me for that. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.